Spotlights carve a hard rim around the dais as cameras hum and glassware trembles. In the crowd's held breath, a lone figure rises, turning the room into a courtroom without a judge. The accusation detonates, and attention slams toward the young interpreter on stage. Ava Collins feels the air thin and the floor tilt, yet her hands lift, steady, precise, relaying poison without flinching. Across the front row, Adrian Holt watches with the patience of someone fluent in storms. Beyond him, Conrad Pierce remains sculpture still, the kind of stillness that means calculation, not peace. Colleagues lean in, scenting blood, while the company's branded banners billow like verdicts already written. Somewhere in the back, a phone lifts, a red light blinks, and humiliation takes aim. Ava inhales the sterile chill of recycled air and chooses posture over panic. The room decides nothing. Yet. Ceramic tiles throw back white light, too clean to forgive mistakes. Ava grips the sink until her knuckles blanch, mascara spidering at the edges of swollen eyes. Fluorescent buzz becomes a hive of judgment in her ears, memory looping every smirk, every shrug, every practiced indifference. The mirror offers a stranger who folds inward to become smaller than the stall door can hold. Then a soft shuffle, a paper-thin knock, a handkerchief appearing like mercy from an old world. Henry Abbott's presence carries the warm, chalk-dusted patience of classrooms that no longer exist, a gravity that rounds sharp emotions. Ava presses linen to her face and breathes the faint trace of cedar and soap, something human in a tower welded from glass and rules. Her pulse slows. The stall latch slides back. The hallway waits like a gauntlet, but the handkerchief knots into her sleeve like a vow.
On a morning polished to a shine, the lobby glows like a museum curated for strangers. A man stands at the desk with hands that speak fluent urgency, met by faces that only hear with ears. Ava crosses the marble, calf muscles tight, heart rehearsing the taste of failure. She lets her hands become the sentence her throat can't carry, shaping clarity that melts the receptionist's confusion into relief. The space stills, a chandelier of glances crystallizing above them. Adrian Holt's eyes brighten with the recognition of being reached without translation fees or pity discounts. Somewhere near the bank of elevators, the CEO's reflection lingers in a pane, watching without blinking. Kindness lands, weightless and heavy at once. The cameras in the ceilings blink on like indifferent stars. Ava's palms tingle with remembered nights spent learning a language to bring a brother out of silence. The subject line arrives like a gavel. Final notice. Unauthorized client communication. Policy breach. Immediate risk. The letter arranges words into traps she never saw being set. Paragraphs that sound neutral until they draw blood. Ava's thumb hovers over acknowledgement, skin prickling with the sudden certainty that compliance can be weaponized faster than empathy can recover. The office hums a bright, harmless song as desktop forests sway with reusable bottles and mindful plants. She reads again, understanding the trick. Punishment dressed as procedure, shame stapled to professionalism. The hallway shimmers with colleagues who learn to smile while subtracting rivals. On her desk, the handkerchief sits like a flag from a kinder nation. Ava files the message, prints it, and slips it into a folder labeled with her own name. No one needs to tell her that paper cuts deepest when it pretends to be fair.
Conrad Pierce's office is all horizon and trophies, a room that denies the existence of smallness. He studies Ava the way a chess player studies a board, searching for the move that explains the last mistake. Questions arrive without cushions, each one stripping her gestures down to motive. She names her brother without apology, letting the syllables anchor the air. Conrad's gaze shifts minutely, like a tower window admitting an inch of weather. He says nothing with exquisite precision, mastery disguised as restraint. The city beyond the glass tilts like a map in a storm. On a shelf, a photo frame holds a landscape without people, as if feelings had been evicted long ago. Ava leaves with no promises, only a sense of being measured for a suit that may be armor or a noose. Down the corridor, silence walks beside her, taking notes. Elevator mirrors slice faces into angles, manufacturing multiple versions of the same contempt. Jokes travel with the elasticity of gum, sticky, stretched, and snapped back into smirks. Fingers imitate her signing with barbed mimicry, hands that know only mockery attempting fluency in cruelty. The car glides through floors like a needle threading gossip into policy. Shoes click, perfume floats, and names hover just behind teeth, careful not to be recorded. Ava feels the heat of being uninvited from her own day, yet her spine finds its line. In the reflection, a woman straightens, smoothing a thrift store blazer until it conducts poise. The doors part. The lobby spills out another audience, and the building inhales. She steps into the current without asking it to be kinder. She wears the handkerchief tucked at her wrist like a small lighthouse built for one storm.
The conference room glitters with confidence purchased wholesale. Monitors, catered minimalism, glass walls eager to witness collapse. The official interpreter is somewhere between traffic and excuse, and clocks become weapons. Ava is asked, then expected, then placed. Her hands lift, betraying the tremor of a heart beating too loud to ignore. Technical terms tilt and fall. Simple phrases step on each other's toes. A graph waits for context and gets silence. Laughter doesn't roar, it seeps, low and humid, curling around ankles. Adrian's patience remains steady, but patience cannot mute a room addicted to spectacle. The table's edge is suddenly a cliff, and Ava can't remember how to breathe on cliffs. Humiliation doesn't slap, it wraps. She finishes badly, which is worse than not finishing at all. Her chair skims backward, the door finds her shoulder, and the corridor opens like a runway to nowhere. The restroom holds its sterile truce, promising anonymity for the price of isolation. Ava braces herself against cool tile, counting breaths by the pattern of the vents. A flash cuts the air, phone camera bright, opportunistic, unkind. Paige Sloane's silhouette recedes with the geometry of a predator exiting a blind. The notification chime that follows is quiet enough to be cruel. Ava tastes copper fear and chooses water, paper towel, reassembly. She shakes her hands once, as if slinging off the weight of eyes. In the mirror, defeat and defiance fight for territory. The defiance wins by a millimeter. Outside, footsteps gather like weather. She tucks the handkerchief deeper into her sleeve, fabric against skin, old-school softness resisting new-school spectacle. One more breath. Her mouth sets into a line that forgives nothing and needs no audience. She opens the door before it opens her.
Henry Abbott appears where comfort is cheapest and bravest, just outside the blast radius. His posture holds stories of classrooms with broken radiators and art hung on clothespins, of kids learning to turn mistakes into texture. He speaks softly of worry as proof of care, of the messiness that accompanies any attempt at meaning. His eyes have edges fretted down by decades of watching stubborn potential finally bloom. Ava listens with the kind of attention reserved for exits and maps. The handkerchief warms at her pulse. Around them, corporate tempo resumes, emails flying like birds that never land. She stands taller, not because the building grew gentler, but because someone reminded her that gentleness can be a weapon too. Henry nods once, an approval stamped without paper. The lesson follows her down the corridor. Endurance isn't silence, it's sound carried in steady hands. A smaller conference room offers honest light and fewer places to hide. Adrian Holt's presence narrows the chaos to focus. The way a conductor makes noise choose harmony. Ava's hands settle into a rhythm that respects precision without worshiping it. She starts hearing the shape of intention beneath his meaning, a current she can ride without drowning. Conrad watches from a chair that looks designed to test posture and patience. His pen taps like a metronome for control. The meeting ends without ceremony, yet the air feels re-threaded, sturdier. Adrian's approval isn't bright, it's grounded. The kind of nod that means a door unlocked somewhere deeper than HR can reach. Conrad's silence is not empty, it is banked fire.
Ava leaves knowing that competence has a timbre, and she just found hers. Outside, the building pretends it didn't shift.
A memo arrives with the smell of fresh ink and old intent. The language is immaculate, balanced on legal heels, declaring that interns must not initiate or conduct client communications under any circumstances. The date stamps obedience into retroactive guilt. Martin Blake reads it aloud in a tone that forgives nothing and reveals little. Ava files the paper with a calm that lies. Her stomach flips like a coin tossed by a stranger. Down the hall, Paige moves through departments like a roomer with good posture. Processes that once seemed neutral now glow with seams and hinges, places where a hand could push and a career could fold. Ava traces the signature at the bottom and knows the trap wasn't built today. It was built for anyone who confuses kindness with permission. The folder in her bag grows heavier, edge sharp against fabric. Someone edits the lobby footage until kindness looks choreographed and sincerity looks rehearsed. The clip lands in Slack channels with captions that cut quicker than knives. Hashtags blooming like weeds. Ava's phone becomes a siren she can't silence, vibrations stacking into a message that says, "Spectacle wins." She scrolls once, then stops, refusing to let narrative theft finish the job. Across the floor, monitors catch the video and fling it back, each screen a mirror warped for entertainment. Henry frowns at his desk, an expression that remembers chalk dust and fair fights. Adrian's team goes quiet, which is its own statement. Ava opens a blank document and starts listing what's true. The list contains fewer words than the lies, but weighs more. The handkerchief cools her wrist like a small stone pulled from a stream. She closes Slack. She chooses work.
Carla Brooks's competence is a locked cabinet with the key taped underneath, easy to admire, impossible to love. Her posture says service without curiosity, her timing exact enough to erase human error and the learning it carries. In a hallway designed to echo success, she mentions standards in a tone polished by contracts. The observation lands like a stamp on paper already bent. Ava accepts the ink and declines the narrative. She considers the difference between perfect translation and faithful connection, between clarity that isolates and clarity that invites. The difference is the space where people live. Her brother learned there. She learned there too. Culture tends to prefer cabinets. She prefers doors. The thought does not fix anything. It does sharpen her next movement. Carla turns away, satisfied with symmetry. Ava turns toward the stairs, a place where ascent demands breath. A conversation drifts from a cracked boardroom door, names that fund foundations, schools that survive on charity disguised as strategy. One surname hooks into a ribcage with quiet malice. The link between company politics and Noah's classroom snaps tight. The realization lacks spectacle. It arrives like cold air under a drafty window, simple and unstoppable. Ava closes her eyes and counts the balance due. Reputation, income, the way humiliation travels home and eats dinner at the table. The handkerchief carries a faint crease where she had clutched too hard. She smooths it deliberately, ironing fear into focus. The stakes reconfigure into something she can name without trembling. If she folds, the costs land on someone who never asked for this fight. That is not acceptable. The hallway inhales, and she exhales back, a measured answer to a question no one admitted asking.
In a status meeting built for ritual, Conrad Pierce chooses process like a blade. Policy is praised, exceptions cauterized, and Ava's name briefly converted into a cautionary slide, none will save to desktop. The room's relief is almost visible. Order has been restored by insisting it was never threatened. Ava absorbs the chill, recognizing that distance can be both shield and test. Conrad's eyes never stray from the agenda, yet a tension wires the silence between each bullet point. When the lights lift, colleagues escape with the speed of schoolchildren released. Ava remains seated a breath longer, learning how to inhabit discomfort without surrendering shape.
Conrad gathers his notes with meticulous, frictionless grace. The door closes on ambience scented with citrus and control. Somewhere behind steel and glass sit griefs that do not sign, that refuse translation. She files that away too. Kindness sometimes arrives on borrowed faces. The fellow intern offers help that tastes like sugar and lands like sand. Shared prep notes vanish from a drive that suddenly forgot its own history. A draft deck appears elsewhere with her exact structure, but none of her marrow. Paige's fingerprints are everywhere and nowhere at once, forensic art made from plausible deniability. Ava breathes through the insult until it loses volume. Ownership is not the deck. It's the thinking that outlives theft. She opens a new file and builds again from first principles, cutting clutter, tightening flow, braiding data to meaning as if securing a bridge against high water. The second version moves cleaner than the first. Theft accidentally made it stronger. She thanks no one and names the lesson. Some losses are chisels. The handkerchief dries the sweat at her wrist. The cursor blinks, patient as tide.
After hours turns glass into ink, and conference rooms into aquariums full of sleeping sharks. Ava remains, harvesting quiet like a crop. Screensavers drift into corporate constellations. Streetlight bleeds up through the atrium, painting her desk in a soft municipal gold. She replays the day's slights without letting any of them call themselves truth. Each memory shrinks beneath the weight of new structure, new practice, new steadiness. Her brother's laughter arrives in memory like a lifeline thrown exactly right. The handkerchief sits folded beside the keyboard, a relic refusing to retire. She signs to the empty room, not performance, just muscle honoring muscle. Somewhere in the building, a vacuum cleaner sings its low, unfashionable song of work. At midnight, she closes the laptop with care, as if tucking a child into bed. Tomorrow will not forgive, but it might respect. Morning brings nerves sharpened into needles, and a room stripped of applause. Adrian Holt shifts into regional variance with the ease of a traveler who knows every back road. Ava follows, missteps once, twice, then catches the rhythm under the rhythm, the pulse woven into movement. Her hands stop chasing and start leading, not from arrogance, but from intimacy with the current. The exchange tightens into a duet where meaning breathes in both directions. The failure from earlier becomes ballast, stabilizing what would have tipped. Adrian nods, a small verdict that rebalances the floor. Outside the glass, passers-by blur into streaks of corporate weather, oblivious to the storm that just learned her own name. Ava's shoulders drop the way bridges do after bearing weight without breaking. She leaves the room without checking for witnesses. Not every victory needs an audience to be real.
Conrad's office returns like a recurring dream that doesn't change but reveals more. He applies pressure with the intelligence of a man who understands thresholds. How much force invites truth, how much breaks the subject. Questions tighten until Ava names her boundary with precision. No speechifying, no pleading, only the principle that invisibility is not a policy she will accept. The words hang between them, not brave, just exact. Something in Conrad's jaw relaxes, almost imperceptible, like a drawbridge testing its hinges. He shelves the moment without comment, yet the room's temperature alters by a degree. A single framed photo faces differently than before. Ava leaves unsure whether she passed an exam or set one. In the reflection of the hallway glass, she notices posture has replaced apology. The air tastes slightly less controlled, which is to say slightly more honest. Paper arrives in gentle hands, the kind that usually carry kindness or keys. Henry Abbott, hurrying to be helpful, signs a witness statement dressed in neutrality and sewn with lies. Realization lands like a dropped bowl, soundless but total. Paige's smile blooms 3 corridors away, as if watered by the act. Henry's face collapses into regret that belongs in a different decade. Ava's first impulse is anger, quick and hot. The second is defense, of him, not herself. Systems feed on scapegoats. She won't donate him. She pockets the document and begins mapping the trail of authorship like a teacher grading plagiarism with love and accuracy. Henry's apology is a quiet, shattered thing. Ava answers by standing closer, by refusing to let a good man's mistake become another weapon against softness. Mercy recalibrates the floor beneath both of them.
Rumors don't walk, they seep, collecting into shallow, dangerous lakes in corners of departments. Adrian might pull out. The board wants a cleaner headline. HR has already drafted a separation script, disguised as compassion. Ava sharpens the edges of her presentation until fingers itch. She prints backups on paper that smells like resolve and staples them with the care usually saved for keepsakes. The building thrums with a pre-event hum, electric and slightly carnivorous. Martin Blake avoids eye contact with professional skill. Carla polishes competence until it almost gleams. Paige drifts like a perfume you can't name but can't ignore. Ava knots the handkerchief into the cuff of her blazer, a small signal that the old world is invited to this fight. Outside, rain rehearses against the city. Inside, chairs align into rows that promise nothing. The auditorium opens like a jaw, teeth bright, tongue carpeted, voice multiplied. Banners declare partnership and fonts engineered to soothe investors. The dais wears fresh flowers and expensive restraint. Ava steps into the white rectangle of light, where careers are minted or melted. She senses the collective appetite for certainty, for choreography that proves the company deserves its own story. Conrad's presence charges the front row with voltage measured in legacy and loss. Adrian folds his hands in his lap, the quiet of a man ready to be surprised and pleased by neither. Cameras adjust their focus, lenses click into hunger. The program begins with the frictionless patter of practiced civility. Ava's pulse synchronizes with the steady blinking of the recording lights. Somewhere high above, an AC vent hisses like a snake that only bites the unprepared.
Technology chooses its moment with cruel intelligence. The microphone mutinies, converting words into static and leadership into mime. Panic scrapes along the edges of the stage, looking for a home. Ava doesn't look at the crew or the ceiling. She looks only at Adrian, at the reason communication exists. Her hands rise, sculpting meaning from silence with the authority of someone who learned patience at a kitchen table with a brother who never needed noise to understand love. The room tilts toward her, first in confusion, then in need. She carries the content and its temperature, the numbers and their consequence, the promise without the perfume. Audiences tolerate novelty, they submit to competence. The hum subsides into attention. When the mic revives, it feels optional. Ava lowers her hands with the calm of a pilot who has already landed. Paige chooses spectacle over timing, interruption over inquiry. The accusation cleaves the air again, dressed now in corporate vocabulary and ethical concern. Her words stack like legal blocks, built to fall on one target. The audience tightens, delighted and repulsed in equal measure, the way humans are when invited to watch potential ruin. Ava does not flinch. She does not flee. She refuses to decorate the moment with outrage. The stage smells faintly of metal and lilies. Somewhere, a camera zooms. 100 careers calculate their proximity to risk. Conrad stays perfectly still, a weather system waiting to declare. Adrian's expression closes like a book people assume they've read. The room wants a scene. Ava gives them service. Hands up, meaning delivered, emotions translated without apology. The accusation hits the surface of competence and slides off without finding purchase.
Ava becomes the conduit that refuses to corrode. She carries venom without swallowing it, presents criticism without bending its spine, and refuses to edit cruelty into something more palatable for power. In doing so, she exposes intent as plainly as data, a transparency that cannot be rebutted without admitting preference for distortion. The auditorium experiences an unfamiliar sensation, respect for a person they plan to pity or punish. Paige's certainty flickers, a candle in air it cannot control. The moment teaches its own lesson about integrity without needing a slide. Ava's breath remains measured, shoulders squared, gaze level. The handkerchief edges her cuff like a white flag that means surrender to truth only. When she finishes, silence arrives first, then understanding, then the kind of applause that doesn't celebrate spectacle but relief that someone chose exactness over theater. Validation, when earned properly, does not gush. It lands with a thud of rightness that rearranges furniture in the mind. Adrian communicates choice with economy that shames the room's earlier appetite for drama. He recognizes craft beyond credentials, fidelity beyond perfect execution. The partnership anchors itself not to polish, but to purpose. People who came to witness a stumble feel the ground firm under their chairs. Carla's competence looks suddenly narrower. Martin recalculates future meetings. Paige stares into a mirror no camera can capture. Ava remains steady, hands cooling after labor, pulse easing. The dais absorbs a new weight, trust that requires no memo to enact. This is not a win to dance around. It is a decision to guard. She notes it, tucks it beside the handkerchief, and prepares for the next front, because victory is never the last scene.
Conrad Pierce chooses his moment like a surgeon chooses an incision. When he stands, the room's noise amputates itself. His declaration is less sound than structure, a scaffolding that appears in an instant and holds. He binds Ava's role to the platform's future with language that welds, not tapes. The message to dissent is clear without being cruel. Competence has a new custodian, and this is not a discussion. The company inhales the instructions for stability and finds them surprisingly breathable. Paige learns how ice melts under scrutiny not by temperature, but by truth refusing to blink. Conrad sits with the control of a man who finally permitted his grief to choose usefulness. The front row shifts from calculation to commitment. Ava's knees consider trembling and decline. The building itself seems to stand an inch taller, as if posture were contagious. Backstage trades glare for hush, applause for HVAC sigh. Conrad's mask loosens along seams cut by time and choices poorly made. He offers a fragment of past pain without ceremony, not as absolution-seeking, but as context rearranged into accountability. Loss taught him the cost of withheld attention, the price of performing leadership while neglecting care. Today's decision did not erase that ledger, it started a new one. Ava receives the confession the way professionals receive delicate equipment: steady hands, steady breath, no dramatics. The moment renews nothing and everything. It does not promise easier days, it does promise worthier ones. When they part, the corridor returns to ordinary length. The handkerchief in her cuff feels less like a relic and more like a thread stitching two difficult worlds together. Power and mercy agreeing to share the same hallway without flinching.
Weeks rewire into systems that remember people. Ava's new office overlooks the lobby where a small act changed a building's appetite. Policies receive translations into behavior, and behavior receives translations into culture. Adrian's project grows roots that sprout training rooms and design standards, and someone finally budgets for care without calling it charity. Noah visits and touches the glass with the frank curiosity of a teenager mapping elevations. Henry waves from his post, pride folding into routine like sugar into batter. The handkerchief sits framed near a plant that refuses to die under fluorescent tyranny. Ava measures success not by applause graphs, but by quiet corridors where misunderstandings shrink. The board discovers that inclusion can be monetized without being monetized to death. It is not a miracle. It is maintenance done with love and documentation. Launch day pours light into corners that used to store excuses. The auditorium fills with faces more various than the posters ever promised. Wheelchairs and canes and service dogs and patients, all present and unapologetic. Ava takes the stage without tremor, gait calibrated to the exact tempo of her intention. She speaks and signs in tandem, a choreography that refuses to separate intelligence from empathy. The room registers a shift from program to practice, from rhetoric to ritual. Banners rise not like verdicts, but like bridges, their words meaningful because they now correspond to reality. In the front row, Conrad allows memory to become fuel rather than fire. Adrian sits with satisfaction that does not need to smile to be seen. The applause lands warm and deserved. Outside,
The city keeps its speed. Inside, a tower learns how to listen.